You are listening to the Space-Tastic Mysteries podcast. We are beginning Anna Gale Line's third novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Lost on Planet M-142. Trapped on the hostile world of planet M-142, Commander Jessa Peacock Masters of the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau has spent 3 grueling months undercover, investigating a mysterious cult led by the enigmatic blind prophet, Danielle Jabot. Is Jabot a visionary, a fraud, or something far more dangerous? The deeper Jessa digs, the more tangled the web becomes: secrets, deception, and whispers of an impending assassination. When her husband and fellow operative, Nate Masters, finally joins her, their mission takes a deadly turn. Someone wants Danielle Jabot dead, and the list of suspects is as vast as the stars. As Jessa and Nate race against time, they must navigate a treacherous world of fanatic followers, shadowy enemies, and their own rekindled partnership. With every step closer to the truth, one question looms: is Jabot the target, or the mastermind? This is episode 3, The 10-Day Ordeal. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
Peacock. Peacock. Please don't leave me, Nate screamed at the top of his lungs, thrashing and jerking around the bed. I had been sitting in the black oversized chair in the corner of my apartment bedroom in the Jabot compound. Sitting in the dark, I had spent hours, ticking off in my head every person who had reason to set that bomb. When Nate screamed, I crawled on the bed toward him. "Jag, I am here." "You are having a nightmare," I said, sitting next to him. When he continued to thrash about, tangling himself up in the blankets, I shook his shoulder. "Jag, wake up." Nate's eyes slowly opened, then he blinked several times to adjust his eyes to the darkness. His eyes fell on me. "Peek, you're back," he declared, throwing his arms around me. After a few seconds, I pulled away from his embrace. I moved the drenched hair out of his eyes. "You were having a nightmare. We are on planet M-142 in the Jabot compound, do you remember?" He stared at my stomach, touching it gingerly. "And you're still pregnant, right?" I shot him a sidelong glance before touching his shoulder. "Lizzie and I are fine. We are right where we are supposed to be with you." He leaned back, situating the pillow behind him. I snuggled up to Nate, resting my head on his chest. I could hear his breathing returning to normal. He put his arm on my shoulders. "You love me again." I looked up, staring at him. "What do you mean I love you again?" "I will never stop loving you. You did in my dream. You took Reggie and Remy and left me for another man, tall, red-headed man with an apron," he began, looking intently into my eyes, fingering my hair and face as if he'd never seen it before. Tall, red-headed man with an apron. That sounded familiar, but who did I know that fit the description? Then it dawned on me: Saber March. Why would Nate dream that I left him for Saber? Then you were in a store and a bomb went off and you and Lizzie. He let his voice trail off. His meaning was implied. His breathing picked up again. It was a nightmare. That's all it was. I sat up and cradled his face in my hands. "Me leave you? Never. I love you, and nothing you say or do is going to change that." I stroked his cheek with my thumb, returning his gaze. "And nothing is going to happen to Lizzie and me. She's our daughter. She and I are survivors. Abby was our daughter too, but she didn't make it. Joshua was your son with Ben, and he didn't make it. Both were casualties of our jobs." I waved my hand in the air. "If you want to get technical, Joshua died because Ben was a federal agent, not me. That's not the point, and you know it." "And what is the point?" I asked through clenched teeth. "You want me to sit on the sidelines for the rest of my pregnancy?" "If I could convince you to, yes," he countered, folding his arms over his chest. "You were so supportive of me continuing to work through my pregnancy with Reggie and Joshua. Why not this time? What's changed?" I held his withering stare, daring him to voice what he and I knew was the answer. "That's my baby you are carrying. Lizzie is my daughter. And no offense because I know it wasn't your fault, but my first daughter is dead. I get that. She was my daughter too, but that doesn't give you the right to stop me from being me. By taking unnecessary risks and endangering our baby? Tomorrow when I see Mr. Trapper, I'll tell him I am sorry for saving his life then, I retorted, wiping the glistening beads forming on my forehead. I felt as if I had just stepped into an oven. I didn't mean it that way. I just want you to be careful. He lifted my chin up with his finger, forcing me to look at him. I love you, and I love our baby. His lips met mine, kissing me once, then twice, which led to a series of kisses. He pressed his forehead against mine. His eyes widened in alarm, pulling away from me to stare. He put his hand on my forehead. You are burning up. He grabbed my arms and pushed back the sleeves of my nightgown. The sores on my arms grew in size and turned unusual shades of purple and red. Peek. I snatched my arms away from him. No, I am not going back to the Liberty. Send for the doctor. Have him take a landing craft down here. I really think that it would be best if we brought you back to the Liberty. Jag, I added, letting out a big yawn, covering my mouth. I just feel so tired. I laid down and curled into a ball, closing my eyes. Soon dreams of our home in DC, Reggie and Remy playing in the front yard and rocking on the porch with Nate, Joey and Colin invaded my mind. I don't know what more you want me to do, I heard Dr. Manning shout. I have done everything medically possible, but she just isn't responding to the antibiotics. I want you to heal her, a familiar voice, that of my husband, yelled back. I detected nurses and doctors bustling about and being paged, patients complaining and machines humming. Without looking around, I knew I was in the hospital aboard the Liberty. My hands bunched. Why did Nate bring me here? I told him not to. Maybe he had a good reason. Maybe my illness was more than Dr. Manning could handle on the planet, I reasoned. Putting my hands on the bed, I forced myself to sit up. I surveyed the room. My eyes fell upon Remy and Reggie, who sat in chairs next to my bed. From the bags under their eyes and their unkempt hair, I deduced that they were worried about me and had been by my side most of the night. I reached my hand toward them. Mom, Reggie screamed, swinging her untidy ponytail from side to side. She climbed onto the bed and into my arms, crying softly on my shoulder. I patted Reggie's back, whispering, "Assassination," deliberately in her ear every few seconds, casting Remy a confused gaze. I pointed to Reggie's back and mouthed, "What happened?" Jessa, Remy acknowledged as he moved onto the bed, grabbing my hand. I am so glad that you are awake. Dr. Manning said that if... How long have I been sleeping? I interrupted Remy, messing up his hair with my hand. Remy counted on his fingers and assented, 10 days. I've been asleep for 10 days, I shrieked more in surprise than in anger. Reggie raised her head, looking into my eyes. And when we were not in school, she declared, smiling at me, we've been sitting with you. I rustled her hair, glancing between Reggie and Remy. I wondered, have I told you two how much I love you? Not in 10 days, Reggie replied, winking at Remy. They were conspiring against me. I smiled, thinking to myself, just like real siblings. Reggie moved to my left side, and Remy crawled into the spot on my right. They hugged me from both sides, sandwiching me in the middle. I wrapped my arms around them, kissing both their heads. After a few minutes, I could hear Dr. Manning and Nate's conversation escalating. Listen, doctor, if you don't reverse my wife's condition, I will take you apart chip by chip, circuit by circuit, barked Nate, anger, frustration and terror evident in his voice. I tapped Reggie's shoulder and instructed, Angel, go tell Uncle Nate that I'm starving. She smiled up at me, then scurried out of the bed and into the hallway. I whispered to Remy, pretend you are asleep. Papa, I heard Reggie pester Nate several times. When did she start calling Nate Papa? I wondered how many other things had changed in the last 10 days. She persisted, Mom's hungry. After a short argument about whether I was awake, Reggie persuaded Nate to check for himself. As I heard them approaching, I clamped my eyes shut. Reggie and Nate shuffled across the floor. Nate chided, "See, Reggie, she's still asleep." "Mom." "Remy. Stop playing," commanded the little girl. My eyes flew open. Although I laughed when I caught sight of Reggie with her hands on her hips, pouting, Nate's eyes widening and jaw-dropping had me laughing so hard that tears fell down my cheeks and my side threatened to split. "Remy," I advised the boy, gesturing to the door with my head, "take Reggie and find me something to eat please while I talk to Nate." Remy jumped off the bed, grabbing Reggie's hand. "Come on, Reg," Remy charged, "let's get your mom a Colonel's choice." After they left, I patted the place next to me on the bed. "Jag, have I really been asleep for 10 days? Nate hesitated a moment before crossing the room and sinking down onto the bed. "The scariest 10 days of my life. What would I do without you? Living without you, I'd go insane." He took my hand in his, shooting me a look riddled in pain and darkness. "Don't ever do that to me again. I have no intention of leaving you." I reached over and touched his face. "I love you so much." I tilted my head, studying him for a moment. His eyes were red, probably from lack of sleep. He had the same disheveled hairdo as Reggie and Remy and the same bags under his eyes. I pressed, "Is it true that Dr. Manning has no idea what I have? He believes it is caused from the blisters on your arms. The flames contain some kind of toxic chemicals. He thinks they were purposely contained in the bomb, and when it exploded, he let his voice trail off, gesturing to me." I nodded slowly. "And he has no idea what to do about it?" He squeezed my hand, covering it with his other one. "He said you would have a better chance for a full recovery if you woke up." He stroked my lips with his thumb, then leaned in and brushed his lips against mine. "Hey, you aren't burning up anymore. I'm sure that's a good sign." I grabbed a pillow, slipping it into the small of my back. I clutched the collar of Nate's coveralls, bringing him closer to me. I pressed my lips against his, escalating the one kiss into 2, then 3. "Children, you can't bring that in there," Dr. Manning yelled outside the door. "Dr. Manning, if that's my sandwich, you'd better let them in," I shouted, breaking away from Nate. I shot him an apologetic smile. "Have you ever gone 10 days without solid food?" Through the door burst Reggie and Remy, followed closely by Dr. Manning, dressed in a crisp, white lab coat. "Colonel, I see you've decided to join the land of the living," the doctor remarked, hands behind his back. "I cannot in good conscience allow you to eat what these," searching his memory bank for the right word, "juveniles have brought you. Here's the deal. You can examine me, you can tell me how bad a BLT on Texas toast is to my health, then I will ignore that advice," I answered, placing my hand on my stomach. Lizzie kicked. I smiled down at her. Just like her mother. Always had to get her 2 cents in. Dr. Manning rushed over to the Dian monitor, a machine that read a person's vital signs and blood work without the need of needles or a stethoscope. His fingers touched the screen. "Your fever has broke, Colonel, the blisters on your arms have disappeared, and all your vitals are returning to normal." He was silent for a moment, pressed a blue button, a yellow and finally a red before studying the image. He concluded, "And baby Miracle is doing excellent as well." He turned to Nate. "I would like to keep her a few more nights for observation." Dr. Manning stood up and shoved his hands in his lab coat pockets. "Doctor. I am over here. I am your patient," I hissed, shifting to see the android better, "not Lieutenant Colonel Masters." When Dr. Manning faced me, I ranted, "Staying here a minute longer is out of the question," looking around the small, sterile room with green walls and only a bed, a Dian monitor, and a few chairs to decorate it. I decided, the best therapy for me is to go back to work. He complained to Nate, "Someone's grumpy." Nate ran his fingers through his dark hair. "My wife was fine before you walked in," Nate returned, pointing to the doors. "Now if you'll leave," Nate ordered, motioning for him to go, "my hungry wife can eat in peace, surrounded by those who love and care about her." Dr. Manning stormed out of the room in a huff. "Thank you. I nodded to Nate, casting him a lopsided smile. He walked in between Reggie and Remy, sliding his arms around their shoulders. You both need to get back to school. Your lunch break is over, he instructed them. Reluctantly, they agreed. Putting the food tray on the end of the bed, they ran from the room. I crawled to the end of the bed before picking up the sandwich. I put it to my lips. The smell of fresh, crisp bacon floated up my nose. I looked over the sandwich at Nate. What happened? It's obviously important if you kick the kids out. I sank my teeth into the sandwich, biting off a piece. Then I wiped my mouth with a napkin. Is it personal or business? I squinted my eyes at him, tilting my head to the side. Business, right? He moved over to the bed, sitting on the edge. Definitely business. Jada Williams needs to make an immediate appearance on M-142. Danielle Jabot and her followers are being accused of planting that bomb. The town was talking about hiring police from a neighboring town to solve this crime. Nate stood up and turned his back on me, rubbing the muscles in his neck. I convinced the mayor to let you and I handle the case, but she's only given us a month before she brings in backup police to help us. And I bet Danny is demanding to see Jada. I sipped my glass of soda. Normally, I would heed Dr. Manning's advice and keep you in the hospital for a few days, but, Nate apprised, twirling back around and bending down to steal one of my potato chips. He plopped it in his mouth. We are going to blow this case if you don't get down to the planet. Can I finish my sandwich, or do I have to eat this in the landing craft? I quipped, biting into the sandwich again. He twisted his mouth. You can finish here, but hurry. He reached out and grabbed my hand, fingering my wedding ring. He gazed into my eyes. I've missed you so much. What do you say to some alone time when we are finished with this assignment? Why do we have to wait until it's over? I finished the last bite of my sandwich. I have that apartment where we can have some time together when we are not working on this case. I wiped my mouth again, picking up a handful of chips. He studied me, giving me a sidelong glance. He shook his finger at me. All in good time. After I consumed my food and made arrangements, we returned to the landing craft.